Hello, good afternoon from Dubai. Good morning from San Francisco. We are really, truly honored and privileged to have Vivek Wadhwa at 6 a.m. in the morning, all the way from San Francisco. Vivek, welcome. Good morning.
It's great to be on with you, my friend.
You're too kind. And, I've been talking to you online these days, and it's just been an absolute revelation as we peel the onion and we find the true essence of the man that you are. My respect and reverence for you keeps growing. So thank you for that. Vivek, just to sort of build the context and to share with the people who will be joining us across the world, just tell us your story, your journey, a quick sort of a Bollywood style or a Hollywood style journey to get to where we are today.
Tarek, I'm a tech entrepreneur who happened to I'm a computer programmer who happened to become a tech entrepreneur, founded a couple of companies, had a heart attack. Then my wife said, okay, time to do something different. So I became a professor, started teaching about several topics, and then got into Singularity University and started learning about advanced, exponential technologies. Then shifted over to Stanford and Carnegie, Mellon University, Harvard, and have been researching all these advances and teaching them to executives all over the world. And most recently, I lost my dear wife to cancer, and I'm determined to cure cancer. That this is my life's mission now, is to help millions of people, in her honor.
Absolutely, it's a very worthy cause, and I'm sure we'll drill deeper into that. And I think that's what really fundamentally creates truly great innovation, is some deep internal motivation to be able to go out there and make a difference. I set up a not-for-profit environment called MAD, the sense of make a difference, and I also was literally moved by some of the things. One was with cancer, and I saw a few other things like that. And actually, the first project that I went into was around water. And that clean water, 80% of disease in the world is water related, and 80% of that is preventable. So 64% of the disease is now preventable only by clean water. And
that was what I'm working on.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you that question. The second area that you speak about is sanitation. I was going to get this later on, but this is an open chat, so you started early. Tell us about.
Let's cover the basics first. Let's discuss why it's possible for someone like you and me. I mean, all the Buddhas, as we would say in Hindi or Urdu, to be talking about saving the world. Let's talk about the basics first, then we'll get to what we can do.
All right. Sounds good. So let's get back to the basics. You talk about incremental to exponential. My company is called Exponential. We know that Moore's law clicked in and various others. So I think the future has already sort of happened. Is unevenly distributed. So that's how, 5 years ago when I started on this futuristic journey, 6 years ago, I was 5 years ahead. Now I'm basically barely 5 months ahead, if that at all. I just have the wisdom to connect the dots. Tell us about your, with Singularity, you were there right at the very beginning with Peter Diamandis and Salim Ismail. Tell us how that transformation shift happened and all the exponential growth that we are seeing in the world today.
Yeah. When I started my academic career, I was studying entrepreneurship and innovation and U.S. immigration policy. And I used to talk about how startups had the advantage over big companies, that David would defeat Goliath. If you read my recent articles, I'm talking about how Goliath is going to eat David for lunch, because the same technologies that made it possible for startups to come out of nowhere and to defeat big companies are now giving big companies the advantage over startups. That's what my book From Incremental to Exponential was about. That this is not necessarily good, because I would rather see startups wiping out big companies. But what's happened is that if you now look at these companies with $2 or $3 trillion values, that was inconceivable before. That you have Microsoft, Apple, and other companies striving for $1 trillion valuations. It wasn't possible before, but it is possible because big companies have inherent advantages. So what I'm saying is that, first of all, a range of technologies, everything from artificial intelligence, computing networks, sensors, synthetic biology. There are a lot of technologies that are now on an exponential path. This is what you very wisely talk about and teach, is that the same exponential trend that started with computing is now happening with every field that becomes information based. This is what Ray Kurzweil taught me, that everything becomes exponential. And then you have multiple exponential technologies converging. So when technologies converge, 1 plus 1 equals 11. It's not 1 plus 1 equals 2 or 3. 1 plus 1 equals 11 with exponential technologies. So they make the impossible possible. So we'll talk about some of the impossible things that are becoming possible. But that's how exponentials go. Multiple technologies on an exponential path, convergences. Convergences disrupt entire industries. And until recently, it was startups that, in Dubai, I know Kareem was a big deal for a long time. And then you had a lot of other startups coming out of nowhere that were able to do big things that surprised everyone. Now the shift is to the power brokers. The existing companies are able to leverage the same technologies and now build trillion-dollar valuations. That, in a nutshell, is what I see happening.
Yeah. It's interesting. You've given me a truly genuine new insight in the way you've articulated that, because I'm frustrated by it, but I've never heard it been articulated in that way, that David was competing with Goliath. Now, Goliath basically doesn't give David half a chance to actually emerge, and the moment they start coming up, they get swallowed. Is this a bad trend in the sense that do we need to find a way to disrupt it? Break up the big tech companies, do something, bring in some kind of structure?
Tariq, if you go and read my writing, for a long time, I was a big fan of companies such as Amazon and Facebook. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg lived close to my house, as did Sheryl Sandberg, and I would call them friends. I mean, Elon and I went drinking together, and we were talking about Mars and so on. Now, if you look at my tweets, I'm attacking these people because I believe that there are two things that have happened. Number one, so my earlier book, Driving the Driverless Car, is a must-read for everyone as well, because it talks about all these technologies, what they're making possible, but it also warns that unless we use these technologies wisely, we're going to end up in the darkness, a dystopia of Mad Max, that we're going to be killing each other.
Yeah.
Technology can be used for good and it can be used for evil. So what's happened is that these companies have become drunk on their own success. That people who are good, like Mark Zuckerberg, who is doing good for the world with social media, are now doing evil because they have abused technologies. They've used them to profit themselves and to harm humanity. So that is a big worry that that I have from all of this. So these companies now have become too powerful. All right. So the question is that to a point, it was wonderful to see these startups, the Googles and the Facebooks and the Teslas coming out of nowhere. But now they become too powerful and they're being destructive to humanity. So we need checks and balances. So I've been advising U.S. regulators to rein in the monopolies. If you read some of my Washington Post articles, I've been very critical about the technologies and the need to rein in these companies because they become too powerful.
Yeah. I talk about some of the big institutions that are out there, United Nations, IMF, World Bank, World Health Organization. They were built 80 years ago for a completely different time, for a completely different problem. Now they've tried to evolve a little bit, but they are not able to control a Facebook or an Elon Musk. We came and we invented the vaccine for COVID. I spoke to Moderna CEO Stefan Bancel on the 20th of January of 2021, the day he was releasing it. And he said, actually, we built the first version of the vaccine in 42 days. And the rest was just blah, blah. So science succeeded. But society, politics, governance failed completely. And I think that, to me, is one of the biggest problems. Big policy is the big problem because big science is doing okay.
I've written about this before also, how law and ethics can't keep pace with exponential technologies because they don't understand. See, laws are codified ethics. Ethics are a consensus that society develops about what's good and what's bad. The ethics, the values that you have in the Middle East are different than what they are in the West, okay? So, what happens is that it comes from social consensus. And social consensus comes from things like religion. It comes from family values. It comes from many things. So unless we as societies decide what's good or bad, how are we going to tell our lawmakers what we want? So our lawmakers don't understand. Society hasn't decided what's good and bad. And yet companies are steamrolling ahead and building all of these technologies. So this is the battle that's going on right now. Technology is advancing faster than we can even understand them, let alone regulate them. And this is what is creating this situation where you have trillion-dollar companies defying governments.
Yeah. This morning, one of the statistics that I was using in my presentation at this bank was that, and this is a Babson College study that was done in 2017, and there have been updates since then, that 75% of the companies that were created in the 20th century will no longer exist by the year 2030.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, 50% of the companies replacing those 75% going down haven't been born today. This was a couple of years ago. So that means startups are going to create so much new value. But what you've just said, that startups are going to get stifled by the big boys, are we challenging this transformation decade for these new companies to come up and innovation to click in?
Tarek, with the stats you cited, I've been studying for a long time. And in Driving the Driverless Car, I talked about it, and from Incremental to Exponential, I talked about it. But the fact is that everything has changed now. That yes, the startups are, I mean, a lot of the Fortune 500 are going to be wiped out. But the 30% that do survive are going to get extraordinarily valuable, as you see with Apple touching $3 trillion. 5 years ago, we couldn't even imagine a company being worth $1 trillion, right? Now we have Amazon and Apple and Microsoft competing for that title, and Tesla was $1 trillion company for a short while, right? But the fact is that this has shifted so that out of the remainders, out of the 30%, the 30% are going to end up eating everything in their path. And this is destructive for innovation. This is destructive for capitalism. Capitalism is based on free markets, except capitalism has now hit some roadblocks because of exponential technologies. This is how dramatic the shift has been.
It's interesting. I mean, we have really just taken off and gone into the stratosphere. Let's come back to Earth a little bit. A lot of people who will be watching this are running companies, some mid, some large corporations. A lot of them are going through that challenge of transformation, challenge of change. What's the early advice that you can give to the people in terms of going through this journey? And I use the metaphor of a metamorphosis, that today's companies cannot just be faster caterpillars. They actually need to metamorphose, go into the pupa, liquidize themselves, and become beautiful butterflies.
Yeah.
But that process of metamorphosis is really painful and difficult. And every company I go into, and I dare say most companies you go into, are struggling with that. So what is that journey? What do we tell the CEO, the board member, of how to make this adjustment?
Tariq, I wrote an entire book about it called From Incremental to Exponential. So I don't want to be pushing a book here, but that's a must read for the people who want an answer to that question. But in essence, it builds upon what you've been teaching with your exponential methods, that companies have to realize that exponential advances are happening. They have to implement new methods. And EXO that you've been teaching over there is one of them. But it's much, much more bigger than that. What you and I have been discussing is that even those methods that you've been teaching now have to be adapted to the more rapidly changing environment. So it's really a matter, and then there are no books on this. I mean, this is why I had to write a book, because even Clayton Christensen's Innovator's Dilemma doesn't work anymore because the disruptor has himself been disrupted. So it's a matter of now realizing that you can't, before there were R&D departments, innovation departments that were tasked with keeping the company current. Now the R&D departments are obsolete, because what happens with the experts is that they specialize in telling you what cannot be done. They focus narrowly on a particular field, and their motivation is to protect the status quo, because if there are new methods, new technologies, new techniques, then they're not the experts anymore. So therefore, those innovation departments battle the changes that are happening, and this is destructive for the company. So what I teach executives is that innovation is going to come from all over the company, that everyone has a role to play in innovation, whether it be marketing, finance, customer support. Every part of the organization has to take a role in innovation. And then you need experts from different fields, that it's not just computing if you're focused on computing, or it's not just the business that you're in that you need to focus. You need to bring in experts from all the different areas. And then the magic of this new era is it's all about brainstorming, that bringing brilliant people together, bringing young and old, men and women, different people with different backgrounds together, getting them to brainstorm, getting them to learn the basics and brainstorm. That's how you come up with the $1 trillion ideas. And hopefully you and I can host one of these workshops, these 2-day workshops that I've been doing all across the world. We can host one in Dubai and teach these executives on that, because I'd love to build on what you've been teaching and now take it 2 levels above that, because this is what I did. When I left Singularity University, I joined Stanford University and then Carnegie Mellon and Harvard, and I started teaching the newer methods 2 levels above what we were teaching at Singularity University, and bringing everything together and teaching companies how to build $1 trillion businesses. So now I'm seeming a little bit hypocritical over here. 5 minutes ago, I was complaining that companies are becoming $1 trillion businesses. Now I'm teaching them how to do that. But the fact is that if companies can learn these methods, they may not become $1 trillion companies, but they'll become more competitive. They'll become more likely to succeed and help their employees. And my hope is that they do good for the world.
Indeed, it just nudged me to go back to my Harvard Business School days. I remember Professor John Cotter teaching us about any kind of change needs some kind of pain, some kind of intense pain before we shift. So let me ask a very counterintuitive and a very beautiful question, which I'm sure the audience will cringe at. Did the COVID crisis finish too quickly and we didn't feel enough pain for us to not go through the changes that we really, really need to fundamentally change the world? In other words, we came out of it through our collective intelligence and stuff like that. Because when I'm going around these days, people have forgotten it. They're back to the good old days. And they've forgotten what we went through, what used to, during COVID, what used to take decades is happening in months and weeks now. What happened to that transformation? Why have we suddenly forgotten it?
Tariq, I love you. Can I disagree with you that it didn't end too fast, too soon? It took too long, for it to end.
Okay, that's the thing. I'm being controversial.
But here's what happened. Okay, when I give my lectures, I give lectures all over the world. When I give my lectures, first, I used to have to teach the basics of exponentials, just like you do. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, whatever.
Yeah.
Now even grandma talks to a junior, as they say in America, about flattening exponential curves. Everyone understands exponentials. No one doubts that exponentials can happen. Here you have the president of the United States saying, "Look, there are only 343 cases. We're going to control it. Everything is going to happen." You have the Chinese premier who's still living in La La Land, thinking he can control COVID. The rest of the world has realized that exponentials are unstoppable. All right, so we accept that. Now, we're grateful to be meeting in person again. And that's why I'm hoping to come and visit you so we can meet all of these people in person, because I'm sick and tired of this nonsense Zoom stuff. Yes, we can do these things, but I want to be meeting people in person, right? So the fact is that even though we went through trauma and we've forgotten some of it, it's part of us now. We understand exponentials. So now the question is, how do we leverage this knowledge, and how do we leverage the experience we've had to do good for the world? How do we now get governments to realize that it's not only, in Dubai, you've got the Minister for AI. Wonderful. When I read about it, I thought absolutely brilliant. But now you need a Minister for Exponential Technologies, because it's not just one technology, it's many technologies. And then you need a Ministry for Convergences, because the convergences are where the magic happens. The $1 trillion industries happen at the intersections of these technologies. So we've learned the basics. We went in shock and awe. Pray that it never comes back, that we never have another pandemic. But let's use the knowledge to take humanity to the next level.
I was intentionally being controversial there, just to open things up a little bit. We've been speaking for almost 20 minutes now. I'd love to invite people with their questions. Mona has been feeding us with some very interesting questions, and we will certainly get into that. But I'd love to hear from the rest of the audience and just comments, if not questions, because I think our conversation is going to meander into a lot of very tough areas and so on. Now, you've spoken about convergence, and this is something I also do a lot. I actually use the analogy of a Gutenberg moment, where when Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press in 1454, everything changed, religion changed, commerce changed, education changed, everything changed, one innovation. Today we have 25 Gutenberg moments happening together simultaneously, and they are all converging and giving us unintended consequences. The question is about unintended consequences, because you are I would call a hyper-futurist. And I'm giving you that new title, a hyper-futurist. I'm hanging into surviving as a futurist, but the kind of stuff that you're talking about. So what are those unintended consequences that are coming through this convergence, good and bad? What are the good ones first, and what do we need to be careful about?
Tarek, look at what happened to America on January 6th. You had literally had an insurrection. Okay, you had people, raiding the White House. They almost killed the vice president. This was unimaginable. A year or two ago, we couldn't have imagined that we would have things like this happening. Why? Because America has become polarized. You have the extremes. You now have one segment of America that's going around spreading hatred, religious bigotry. In America, it's happening. And then all of these battles about abortion and so on and so on. And then you have another America that's at the other extreme, okay, polarized. How did it happen? It happened because of the tools that were supposed to bring society together. In 2014, I think I wrote an article for the Washington Post about how social media will liberate us all and bring us together, make humanity happen. I was praising Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and talking about all the wonderful things that social media will make happen. Social media didn't bring us together. Social media ripped us apart. Why? Because the same Zuckerberg who I was praising used it to polarize. He figured he could make more money if he had extreme content being posted. So he kept feeding us more and more misinformation. So if you were now watching, believing a conspiracy theory, he would give you more conspiracy theories. If you now believe that America is off track and something is wrong here, he would feed you more with that. And then he would put you together with people who had your views. So we became polarized and society started getting ripped apart. The same thing is happening all over the developing world. It's happening in the developed world. It's happening in the Middle East. You have seen this also in the in UAE. You're seeing polarization happening because of these filter bubbles and so on. This is where technology went off track. All right. And this is an example that's happening everywhere, that the technology is being used for evil. Synthetic, you talked about the Moderna vaccine. It was actually built within 48 hours. It took them 42 days to commercialize it, to announce it. But within 48 hours, as soon as they got the genetic sequence, they identified the spike protein, and they were able to, the mRNA platform was built for curing cancer, not for COVID. But they were able to repurpose that platform for cancer within 48 hours, because this is what technology made possible. But the problem is that same technology may have come from a genetic engineering experiment in a lab that went off track. I mean, we haven't exposed, this is still being debated as to where it came from, but it may well have been synthetically produced, because we now have the ability to synthetically produce viruses. So we could now have a new generation of pandemics being created because we can synthetically create viruses, just like we can create antiviruses. That's what the problem with the technology is.
No, I think the collective intelligence to address the virus was something that I thought was amazing, and everybody sort of came together. Again, a social issue for me to address here, and then that would be a nice way to pivot into some of the other work that you're doing. And that is that as the virus came about, I think in Pfizer, we have 12 more billionaires than they were before. Bancel has certainly become a billionaire. The point was not the fact that the vaccine was created and it was then held back, and only with the developed countries and people who could afford. And the fact that it was a global problem, it should have literally been open sourced and given out to South Africa and to India and to other places to make it happen, because it is a global issue. And this is again where hypercapitalism comes back in again, to make it so difficult for us. What do we need to do to incentivize people, incentivize business people? Because how much money do you need, for Christ's sake? I mean, there comes a point where you can't do anything with it anymore other than doing some good with it. So what do we do? What do people like you and I
now let's make it personal. I'm going to talk about curing cancer. My wife Tavinder was everything to me. I mean, I can understand why Shah Jahan built the Taj Mahal, because
Yes.
Mumtaz was everything to him. Okay, so for my wife, I mean, I tried every I tried every advancing technology. I got in touch with the who's who. Fortunately, where I am, I have access to the top scientists, governments, anything. Even the CEOs of the pharma companies. When I wrote to them, they wrote back to me. We tried everything to save her. We couldn't save her because even though I had 3 labs literally ready to create personalized vaccines for her, the most advanced, just like what the mRNA COVID thing was, we didn't know what to target. We didn't have the data to know how to target her tumor. Um, so what I realized was, and then she went on clinical trials. What I realized was that the entire medical system in the United States is screwed up. It's geared towards the pharma needs of the pharma companies, not of the patients. We have the data, except the data is being hoarded by the companies. So after I lost her, for months, I didn't exit the house. I was just completely devastated. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to now do what Devinder said. She said, because she had told me that if her suffering, because I said, can I share your data with anyone? She said, Vivek, if my suffering can help others, it was worthwhile. So please do it. Please help others. Please do what you can to make sure no one suffers the way I did. So, with the help of some of the amazing scientists who were helping me from Harvard Medical, from Mayo Clinic, from Stanford, I and with the knowledge that you and I have about exponential technologies, because Tarek, you and I are on the same wavelength. We both understand about exponential. So I knew it was possible now to get the data that was needed. So it's a data issue. So what I realized was that we need to get data not on hundreds of people, but on hundreds of thousands, hopefully millions of people. We needed to sequence the tumors. We needed to be able to make this available to researchers all over the world, just like as with the mRNA vaccine. As soon as the data leaked out of China on the genetic sequence of the vaccine, they were able to, of the virus, they were able to build the vaccine. We needed to get all of this data. We also needed to implement some new methods, such as creating 3D organoids. We needed to now start developing CTD. I can get very technical over here, but we needed to develop some new technologies associated with this. So I put together a grand plan to cure cancer. The grand plan would get all the data and the biosamples necessary. The problem was that I live in the United States and the system is corrupt over here. The medical system is entrenched, it's corrupt, it's evil because it's geared towards the rich, just like you described. So I said, okay, what do I do now? Number one was China. I hate to say this, but China is more evil, more corrupt than any other country in the world. It's all about suppressing the population, and the data is used for suppressing the population. Forget it. And then the second was India. India, the problem is that it's also a corrupt country. But the fact is that it has no medical system to protect. Entrepreneurs in India have the same power that we have. This is the beauty of free countries and democracies. That even though there are a lot of problems at the government level, the fact is that society can transcend all of it. They can throw governments out, and we can build new governments. So I went to India, and I went to see the Dalai Lama because the Dalai Lama also was a cancer survivor, and he used natural treatments to cure himself. So I wanted to put in natural, to do research on natural treatments. And then I went to Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister. And Narendra Modi has a bad reputation in many ways, and some of it is earned. But I was amazed at my meeting with him. I spent half an hour with him, and he understood immediately. The guy is a genius. He was relating to what I was talking about, because I was talking about creating data banks and biosamples, and he understood. And he told his principal scientific advisor, he said, within 3 months, I want to report. I want to help Professor Wadhwa with his goals. So they circulated the plan, and it reached the right entrepreneurs. Venkat Ramachandran, who was Ratan Tata's number two, and a bunch of Indians, leading entrepreneurs, were looking to build a distributed cancer care network. And they got my proposal, and we merged them together, and we launched Carcanos Healthcare. Carcanos Healthcare is going to do everything I wanted and much more. They're going to get all the data we need, the biosamples, and they're going to make it available to researchers all over the world so we can cure cancer. And already you're seeing now, Rakuten Medical from Japan is moving their R&D to India. Harvard Medical is moving some of their R&D to India. Mayo Clinic just invested in them. They're moving some of their R&D to India. We're going to now create the largest medical platform for curing cancer in the world. It's going to be in India, where we don't have these vested interests to protect, and we're going to make it available to all over the world. This is what I was able to make possible with the help of some amazing people in India. So I've got to give credit to the Carcanos team that this is, their genius and so on. But they're implementing my grand plan. That's the magic that's possible now.
That's an amazing story, and I think if we had more time, we'd go deeper into it. But I think the message to me is that the grand challenges. I mean, the challenge at the moment, Europe is burning. That's another big challenge, which is climate change, and I think I hate to say that because in the past I've been a part of it. Is that media has been very disingenuous in terms of covering it and the way they are covering it. And almost say, oh, we've always had hot days. What's the big deal? It's a little bit of sunshine kind of comments. And I think they're just denying it because they're totally incentivized to tell the truth. Because, the sponsors and the owners are the big oligarchs. So guess what? Things aren't happening. Anyway, I don't want to get onto my hobby horse there. But the point is that these grand challenges need a grand plan. And I'm absolutely amazed and impressed with what you're doing for cancer. We'll go into it in deeper. I had a wonderful comment by a guy called Chris Kalathudis, and a name like that is probably Greek or Cypriot. And let me read the comment, and then perhaps you can answer that, because I'd like to involve the audience also, please. And it says that the argument that the current power players have become too powerful, more new power players need to be made to make the game fair. Nice, indisputable argument where he says the trillification of companies, instead of valuing our startup PowerPoints at 25 million, we start them at 25 billion. Very interesting. Maybe the easiest thing to do is to keep them radically honest, and to make the financial sector more inclusive, and the biggest cornerstone firms involve the masses in the deals that work and have an unfair advantage. Very interesting insight that young companies are coming in, and I speak about people going onto the stock market in a couple of years, $25 billion valuations. He's spot on. Why are we doing that? I mean, is there just too much money in the hands of the VCs and the BlackRocks and people like that?
That's a flaw with capitalism, and but capitalism has guardrails that need to be implemented, and that's why I've been saying that Amazon and some of these other companies need to be broken up. Facebook should not have WhatsApp and Instagram. They should be separate companies. They should never been allowed to acquire them. Amazon should be a bookstore. It should be a retail company. It should it needs to be broken up into different pieces. The cloud services should be different. So this is now the trouble is that in America, these corruption in the Middle East happens by giving politicians money. Here you have lobbyists who do the dirty work. So they're able to now control government, and they're basically, this is why the government isn't acting, because they're getting so much money from lobbyists. It's a corrupt system, but that's just the way it is. So, what I really like about the UAE is the way the government is actively supporting entrepreneurship, because the threat to the big companies needs to come from places such as Dubai, from even Riyadh, and from Bangalore and Lahore. That's where, because Tariq, this is something you and I both teach, that entrepreneurs can now do what only governments and big research labs could do before. So just like when I want to cure cancer, I realized that America's so entrenched, and no matter what I do here, they're going to sue me. If we tried building Carcanos here, the strategy would be to bankrupt the startup by suing them or acquiring them or doing whatever they had to do. This is why I went to India, where there are no entrenched interests. I mean, there you have Biocon, you have a few pharma companies that are developing, biosimilars and so on, but no one is interested in putting my project out of business, our project out of business. They want to be part of it. So this is why we have a who's who of India coming together, being part of Carcanos right now. And even the largest companies are all cheering it. The government is cheering it because they can. And so what needs to happen now is that some of these projects that you have happening in Dubai, they need to be scaled up. We need to provide, government needs to support them through the entire life cycle, not just initially. This is the flaw in the system over there, that it's not geared towards providing full life cycle support. And then we need to now take on the entrenched interests in the West. That's how technology is going to democratize, because anyone anywhere can build a world-changing company.
Sure. So one of the initiatives that is coming out of the Ministry of AI under the Prime Minister of Dubai's UAE's guidance is 1 million startups, 1 million entrepreneurs. So when the minister told me this about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, I just looked at him. I said, 1 million startups in the Middle East region? It's a MENA region. And he said, yes. And the way he broke it down was very interesting. He said 22 countries, so that's 45,000 startups per country over a 5-year period. And that's 9,000 startups a year. And that's very doable. It's doable in Morocco, Jordan, Egypt, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and so on. So at least half of those 22 countries, it's indeed completely possible. The other half is a wee bit of a challenge. So what they've done is actually broken it down, and we're actually helping them to do that. So there's a 1 million startups, 1 million entrepreneur challenge happening here. And I dare say we should find ways to collaborate on that.
It's brilliant, Tariq. I completely agree with him. This is what I teach as well. That we need to, in fact, you should get him to read From Incremental to Exponential. If you can send him a copy of it, I'd be grateful.
I will do that.
Because it's entirely in sync with it. And it also has a recipe for what do you do beyond that. So you need to start us, but you also need to now nurture them. You also need to now teach them what it takes to survive. Out of the million, we want maybe 1,000 billion-dollar companies. That will boost the economy of the Middle East like nothing will. And it will turn into a model for the rest of the world. That's what we need.
So talking about these new billion-dollar unicorns coming up, Larry Fink from BlackRock, in his letter recently to his stakeholders, he wrote that over 80% of the companies that will become unicorns in the next sort of 10 years or so will be in green tech and sustainable tech, as opposed to just general tech, which was extremely encouraging for me because sustainability needs to be more profitable than the usual stuff. Otherwise, sustainability is never going to happen. So literally, for the incentive to change, to address the problem of climate change, we don't need to just go and, put our plastic bottles separate to whatever else. Actually, we need to go and talk to these big boys and sort of say, hang on, the sustainable green tech is going to make you way more money than the crap that you're working on at this point in time. What do you think about that?
I completely agree that, the planet is heating up. And if we don't realize it now, we will realize it 6 months from now or 3 years from now, that we better save the planet. We better now start investing in companies that are reducing the impact on the climate. We better invest in renewables. We better do all of these things because it's a matter of survival for the planet.
So can I step back and talk about some very basic fundamental issues, and they might even be platitudes, but I think it's really important that we address them because we see them every day of our lives. One of the words, and it was raised also by Mona, is the issue of ethics. You mentioned ethics in connection with law and how to codify that. Firstly, how would you define ethics? And what do we need to be able to understand about ethics in our day-to-day lives in terms of executing it, whether it's in AI or in robotics or anything else? It's a very sort of flat, it's a very broad sort of area. I talk about it. I just want to get your view on what is ethics, what do we need to do on a day-to-day basis.
Tariq, if you go to my website, wadhwa.com, my last name.com, and you search for the word ethics, you'll find a couple of dozen articles I've written about it, because something I keep writing about. Every year or so, I write another article about ethics because we keep forgetting it. Ethics is something that needs to be sewn into the fabric of your startups, of your businesses. Ethics is everything. Ethics is values. Okay, you have Islamic values. Okay, those values that the Quran taught you are the standards by which we live society. They're ethics. We keep forgetting them. We keep putting them aside and leaving and thinking we live in a modern society. We don't have to worry about this. No, the basic values that you were taught from the moment you were a child. Those are what count. Don't ever forget them. They need to be part of everything you do in life, because that is what's going to help you succeed. And what happens is when companies forget ethical values, it's a slippery slope. You keep going, down these dark alleys, and that leads to your destruction. So what I say is that, the short term, being ethical may not seem very smart. In the long term, it's everything. That it is what will lead to long-term success. It is what lead to into happiness. That even if you do the ethical thing and you don't make that much money, at least you will enjoy what you have earned. At least you'll enjoy the values that you do. By helping other people, you may not get any immediate benefit, but I believe in karma, that the karma, the values, that it always catches up with you. You always get what you give. I mean, the more you give, the more you get. So that's why we always have to maintain our ethical and moral values. Go back to the Quran and read the basics and make them part of your life.
Indeed. I mean, I actually talk about ethics and just like yourself, even a stage further, because I say AI and robotics are not unethical. We are. They are not prejudiced. We are. They are not biased. We are. So we need to get our moral values and our moral compass in place, and be able to be good guides and coaches to AI, because in the future that will be serving us. So if we don't get our moral compass in place, it's toast. I mean, I think that. So I can totally reinforce what you're saying.
This entire book, Driving the Driverless Car, this is about ethics and the need to implement those ethics. Read this. If you want to learn about ethics and technology, this is a must read for all of you. It's all about ethics. The entire book is about ethics.
Excellent. So we've covered a lot of areas on a broad base. Let's just actually, before we do that, let's do some silly stuff, and then we'll try to bring it back in. Elon Musk and Donald Trump are two favorite people in the United States. Are having a spat on Twitter. so
they're turning on each other.
One of the greatest genius is now having a little complete hissy fit with Trump. I mean, what the hell is going on?
Tariq, if you follow my tweets, I used to be a Tesla fanboy. I told you I went drinking with him. I don't drink much. I mean, I've stopped it, for the record. But the fact is that this is way back in Fox Studios, where we got into a public debate, a discussion about him retiring on Mars and so on. So I used to think the world of Elon. He got me my Tesla. I got number 104 or something like that, one of the earliest Teslas, because he put me ahead of the line. So I love the guy. He was a big fanboy of his. I wrote more than a dozen articles praising Tesla. When I was writing with the Washington Post, defending him from what the New York Times was saying about him. Okay, now I say that Elon Musk is self-destructing. Why? Because Elon is on drugs. Okay, this is the destructive impact on it. He's taking every recreational drug there is.
Literally or metaphorically?
No, literally. I mean,
Okay.
This is a serious problem. And he's even, the reason why I don't have to worry about getting sued is because he went on the Joe Rogan podcast smoking marijuana, right? So he's talked about it publicly as well. Elon's mind is being destroyed by narcotics, and he's self-destructing. The greatest innovator of our time right now is rapidly self-destructing, and I don't think he knows what he's doing anymore. So he's doing stupid thing after stupid thing after stupid thing. He bet billions of dollars on Bitcoin, and he's now having to take $500 million loss for the company because he said stupid things about Bitcoin and the other stupid coin and so on and so on. And then all of these stupid tweets, to Twitter acquisition. This is all impulsiveness and stupidity. So let's get off Elon, because it's not a positive topic to talk about. But I used to love the guy. Now I worry about him self-destructing.
Yeah. So I think it's coming full circle. We started with hypercapitalism and some of the ills of that, because after the first $1 or $2 billion, you couldn't spend your money, even if you wouldn't know where the hell to spend it. So when you have north of 200 billion, and so you start moving into a parallel universe almost. And I think that's something that is for another time. Now, bringing it back to more practical level, the program that we discussed, because I am really struggling sometimes with boards, with CEOs, with chairmen. They all love my presentations, and I am, like I was today, the dancing monkey at a big bank event, getting people all sort of cheerful and so on. But when it really comes down to decision making, they're making the same old decisions in the same old way, 80% of the time. And I think we need to find a way to tap into all of the Institute of Directors or the governance of boards and stuff. The family companies in this region cover over 80% of the wealth. And you go and talk to them, the patriarch who's 60, 70, 80 years old, has got his old ideas. I built the $1 billion company. You can't tell me what the hell I need to do. the succession to the young 30-year-old coming in, the son or a daughter wants to do things differently. Uh, and then we have the ethical piece in the middle. What can we do together? What can we do in terms of the training and development that we were discussing? And how can they be implemented? Because just going there and chasing yet another board and just doing one little thing at a time, that incremental stuff, because I feel my work is now getting far too incremental and just one at a time. We need to make a bigger difference somehow.
Tarek, I already proposed that the exponential innovation workshop, we bring it to Dubai. We will do one. We'll get government there, get these 30-year-olds all there, get some of the CEOs of these companies there. Let's get 200 people in an event like that, and we teach it there. I guarantee that they're going to want to do one every month and to include the whole of the region in this thing, because it will lead to them now thinking exponentially, and it will give the country an advantage over the rest of the world, because I spent years developing these advanced techniques.
Right.
You and I both are fans of Singularity University. I was head of faculty there. I developed a lot of the curriculum there. But then that was 10, 12 years ago. It's out of date. It's been disrupted. But that's still what they're teaching over there. And this is why, like I said, even what you've been teaching is good. But the fact is, it's been disrupted. Let's now take it to the next level. I'd love to do a partnership with you and whoever else over there to implement all of the. We can have this curriculum being part of the education system of Dubai. We can have the universities perhaps start teaching it. I'm prepared to come there and spend as much time necessary to do it. Let's figure out how to make this happen. If you can get enough demand there, I'll come and teach with you.
Sounds amazing. No, we will certainly do something like that. So I think you need to do your trip to Kerala and meet the chief minister there, get your baseline sorted out, because your grand challenge related to cancer, which hopefully is going to happen literally within this decade, if not sooner than that. We're really rooting for you on that. Going back to the issue of the green revolution and issues around food and water. Food security and water. Can you give us your sort of quick insights on that, and then we'll.
All right, let me tell you about what I'm doing. Forget about the quick insights, okay? So about a decade, I was an advisor to the president of Chile, and I was invited there in 2009 to come and look at their innovation system. They thought I would come and, because I was writing for Business Week at the time, they thought I'd write a glowing article about it. Instead, I told them that they screwed up. They were trying to build an IT cluster to take on India. I said, "You're stupid. A country of 14 million people." So I wrote an article which created major controversy. The economics minister came, and that led to Startup Chile. Startup Chile was the first experiment of its kind, huge success. But as part of that, working with Chile, I met the entrepreneurs there, and one entrepreneur intrigued me. His name was Alfredo Zolezzi. He said that he had developed a system that could convert water into plasma back into water. I said, "Alfredo, you're crazy. Plasma is a fourth state of matter. Lightning takes hundreds of thousands of volts of energy to come to the planet." He said, "I can do this with 1600 watts. He took me to his lab. He showed me a device he had built that could literally convert water to plasma back into water. And he took me to a village over there, a shanty town, where they were getting 100% clean water. So a long story, but I ended up investing in it. I got a bunch of my friends to invest in it. Ratan Tata invested in it. Ricardo Salinas invested. I got big people all over the world to invest in it. And eventually, lots of ups and downs, but his company built a water sanitation technology that's now going to be taken all over Latin America, and wonderful things happening there. But during the pandemic, a problem happened that Airbus and Siemens were developing units to take on their airplanes, and everything stopped. As you know, it was a disaster area. So Alfredo's company almost went bankrupt again. He went back to basics, and he says, "What else can I do with my technology?" What he realized was that he could replicate nature's magic. The way Mother Nature fertilizes the planet is through lightning. When lightning, the fourth state of matter, comes through the air, which is 78% nitrogen and 19% oxygen, it adds nitrates to the water, which is fertilizer, and it adds an oxygen molecule, H2O2, which helps the plants build their defenses. What he found was that his same device could now generate plasma-activated water. So now the company is on an exponential path. The former CEO of Siemens Canada, Robert Hart, has joined to lead the company. A small device can now generate magical water, super water, which will now dramatically reduce the need for pesticides and fertilizer. It's being tested in two of the largest farms in Florida. Amazing results. So this could launch the next green revolution. And this is what I spent months and months and months helping the company get it to the point that they can take it globally. They're ready. So we're going to launch the next green revolution from a technology built in Chile, right? We're going to take on everyone and help the world. And I'd love to bring it to the UAE also. There's no reason why we can't bring it to the vertical farms over there and make them more productive so that the Middle East can now be self-sustaining in the vertical farms. So you have solar panels which power these, and then you have this magical water, and now you can grow all the food you need and all the crops you need in the Middle East itself. That's a revolution in the making.
Amazing. I love your passion, and I love the fact that you sort of see opportunity almost anywhere. And the other thing is your global view, whether it's Chile or it's Kerala or it's Kuala Lumpur. For you, you're agnostic, and because genius can be anywhere, and you keep finding that, and I think that's amazing. LinkedIn
Vivek,
user
what do you
said,
think I spent so much time with you after Mona introduced us? Because I saw suddenly there's someone there who can be an evangelist, who can now spread the word. But what I realized was if I just teach you the next two generations of technologies, you and a lot of other entrepreneurs over there can help the entire region. And that's what I want to do now is to help the Middle East rise.
yeah, I'd be delighted to be part of that catalyst. So a LinkedIn user wrote a comment that if 80% of the companies in the MENA region are family offices, are they able to create 1 billion innovative or 1 million innovative startups in the next 5 years? I can explain that, but what are your thoughts?
Not in the next 5 years, not in the next 5 years, but over the next decade possibly. And it may not be a million, even if we get 200,000. So this is why I love what the AI minister is saying. He's setting the bar so high, because if you shoot for Mars, you might make it to the moon, right? So if you don't have big ambitions, you won't achieve anything. So that's why I love the message behind it. But even if you had a few hundred startups that wouldn't otherwise exist, and one or two of them became billion-dollar companies, it'll uplift the region. So let's think really, really big.
Indeed. And just to also, to the LinkedIn user, one of the comments is that a lot of these family companies are investing a portion of their savings or their wealth into more interesting projects. Because, and this is one of the things I talk about, the 70-20-10 rule. It's Google's golden rule: 70% on core, 20% on business extensions, and 10% on blue sky thinking. The 10% on blue sky thinking, if you're worth $10 billion, 10% as wealth is $1 billion that can be invested. And I think these people need to start doing that, and some of them actually are. So I am a bit more optimistic that because these people trade, and in our region there is an entrepreneurial mentality. Their instincts are good, so they see that they are struggling in one area, they'll immediately go and find a way to innovate. I have a couple of comments here. Okay, a question from some of the people here. Vivek, we're coming to the top of the hour. We've got 6 minutes to go. You spoke wonderfully and very sensitively about your wife, and my heart goes out to you. Who else inspires you? Who do you look up to? I mean, you mentioned the Dalai Lama. You're so blessed to have met him and been. I met Nelson Mandela. I was lucky to do that. Who inspires you? Who gets you going?
Tarek, it's people that you haven't even heard of that inspire me, because it's not the big, like I said, I used to be a big fan of Zuckerberg and Elon and so on, and now I'm trashing them. Even Jeff Bezos. I mean, I sent emails to him long ago. He responded to them. I was a big fan of him. Now I'm trashing him because these people have become obsessed with money. So it's not the money people. The Dalai Lama, yes, because of his amazing values that you can see. When I sat by side for an hour and a half listening to him, then I had a half an hour private audience with him. It's really, I've never met anyone who's pure good. It was filled with compassion. He was looking at helping others. There are a lot of other people like that who do good for the world, who have genuinely good hearts. They're the ones who inspire me. So why am I doing all this, cancer work, this agriculture, and I'm also going to be working on trying to solve the problem of sanitation, because I see, the developing world being all this disease because of poor sewage and sanitation. I'm going to work on that. Why am I doing it? Because my wife inspired me. She says, Vivek, spend the rest of your life helping others. And that's what inspires me. So my wife is my biggest inspiration right now because of the message she left me with. Because she knew that, if I lost her, I would be devastated. So that, she knew that if I was doing good for the world, that would keep me motivated. So now I'm energized and motivated because I'm trying to help other people. That's what everyone should do, is focus on
That's
helping
amazing.
others. There's no
I'll,
more happiness that comes from it. It's the best way of getting over grief. All of you, I'm sure, have had grief. You've lost a loved one. The way to transcend grief is to channel it into helping other people.
Yeah. You touched a very interesting point. I had a moment of grief. I lost my sister about 10 years ago, and I know to a lesser extent, but I know what you went through. Because she used to live in the US and she was here and she passed away overnight, and she was on my watch, so to speak, and I'm the elder brother. So I was fairly traumatized, and it took me time to get over that. More recently, about 5 years ago, you probably know him. His name is Mohammed Galdat, who was the chief business officer at Google X. Mohammed lost his 21-year-old son in an event here, actually in Dubai, at one of the hospitals. He went in for an appendectomy and came out, and over the next 24 hours, just like my sister, and then, basically the child died at 21 years of age. And Mohammed was in total grief, and he literally, just like yourself, and perhaps you should connect because perhaps you have some things to discuss. Amazing man. He's based in the US, by the way, so it might be interesting. So Mohammed has channeled his entire energy into the search for happiness. He's written a book on happiness and on the engineering and science of happiness, because he's an engineer, so that's how he thinks. So he's talking, and now he's building. First, he was doing 1 million happy people, and then 10 million. I said to him, "You work in Google, for Christ's sake. I mean, you should be talking billion or 10 billion. Why not the entire world?" And he said, "Yes, indeed. Why not?" And now he's going out there to try and make 1 billion people happy, and that's what he's doing. So and I think these kinds of stories and motivations are quite amazing. We're really at the top of the hour, Vivek. I mean, for me, I can just go on, and it's fascinating. And I think we need to talk again one-on-one also to really peel the onion a wee bit more, and the bigger discussions we've had, to bring it into something tangible that we can actually address some of the big challenges that we have and some of the opportunities that we can see. What is your final? Is your legacy going to be? So let's say we're coming back to your 80th birthday and we're celebrating the 80th birthday together. What will we be celebrating? What will we be saying that Vivek has achieved?
Tariq, I have no idea. All I want to do is do all
You've
the
cured cancer by then, for sure. You've cured sanitation, for sure.
The way I look at life right now is that I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, so I have to do all I can today. So this is why I'm obsessed with trying to solve big problems and help other people, because I might as well do it while I can, because I may not be capable of doing it, even a month from now. So I have to do all the good I can while I can do it. But I need to come there and let's see if we can get everyone together and do some learning about exponential technologies and the next level up. In the meantime, get some people to read the books, 2 books which we talked about, because that'll help them.
Do you have executive summaries by any chance? I know I'm fast tracking it.
I don't accept it. In fact, I'd give away PDFs because I don't care about making money on the books. I'd much rather, they can probably go on some of these pirate sites and just download them. Do it.
Your final message to the people who joined, and until the next time, anything that you'd like to.
Amazing things are possible right now. If an old guy like me, sitting here in Silicon Valley, can talk about curing cancer, about launching a new green revolution, about cleaning up our rivers and helping millions of people, billions of people, this is a burnt out tech entrepreneur. If I can do this thing, imagine what you can do with the resources you have, right? So to make big things happen, because we can do it now.
What an amazing message, and a lovely way to end this fascinating conversation. Vivek, thank you very much. And I'm grateful to Capital Club, to Muna and her team who reached out to you and made this thing happen. And I hope that we can reach more and more people. for me, I'm eternally grateful to Mona and Capital Club and the team meet on a very personal level that I had the privilege of meeting you. So thank you to them, and thank you to the club, and thank you to all of the people who've attended and participated. And more to come. I shall get on the wire with you independently, and let's sort of, I don't know, plan out something and create something really special in the world.
Let's do it. If you see now on my face, the sun is rising. I'm in Silicon Valley. The sun is coming up and it's coming through my windows. And you can see.
It's nothing here. It's actually, the sun is setting 11 hours apart.
The sun is rising over here.
Yeah, I know. I was teasing a friend of mine in Europe because I'm traveling to Europe next week, saying that, it's 45 degrees here. And she said, oh, it's 38 degrees in Geneva and it's really hot. I said, okay, I said, I don't feel hot here because everything is air conditioned. We have discovered air conditioning, while obviously, places in Europe haven't. So even a 38 degrees in Europe is way hotter than a 45 degrees in Dubai, but that's another story. That's a first world problem, as we call it. Vivek, absolute privilege. Thank you very much indeed. I'll catch up with you later today.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All the best. Thank you, Mona. Thank you, Samin. I guess we've done the thing. Thanks to Capital Club. Join us next week. I think next week we have Sumana from Singapore on the 27th, and this was in the morning. So until then, all the best. Goodbye, and God bless. Take care, everybody, and be careful.